The 360 on Energy and Carbon, hosted by 360 Energy. Robert Lee is the CEO and co-founder of Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. With a bachelor's degree at the Stern School of Business at New York University and a career in finance at various Wall Street firms, Robert Lee left finance to grow Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. When Robert first started in the food rescue space in 2009, the common misconception was that donating food was illegal. RLC has been providing food rescue services since 2013 and is headquartered in New York City. In addition, Mr. Lee has been honored as an Obama Leader USA, Gates Millennium Scholar, CNN Hero, Forbes 30 Under 30 for Social Entrepreneurship, NYC Food Policy 40 Under 40, and Youth Action Net Fellow. Now let's get into the episode with Robert. Welcome back, Dave and John.
Great to be back. Really looking forward to today.
Yeah, we have Sandra back from vacation, and John, we missed you from our last podcast, so welcome back.
Thank you.
It's good to have the gang back. Now today we're joined by Robert Lee, co-founder and CEO of Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. Welcome, Robert.
Thanks for having me.
Let me kick things off with the really basic question. Can you tell us what Rescuing Leftover Cuisine is? What's it about?
Sure, absolutely. Rescuing Leftover Cuisine is pretty self-explanatory in the name itself. We made it very obvious, but we bring excess food from food businesses such as restaurants, catering companies, and various, food production companies and things like that, and we bring it to those in need at homeless shelters, soup kitchens, and food pantries.
Well, that sounds commendable, really does.
Thank you.
Robert, how did you get into this business? There's got to be an interesting story to this.
Yeah, no, I think it really all started back in college when I came across a club that brought leftover dining hall food to homeless shelters. And it was called Two Birds, One Stone. And when I first heard about it, I remember just grilling them about everything that was, going on. Because at the time, I really thought that donating excess food was illegal. And I heard all these myths and things about people getting in trouble or getting sued about, their excess food. And for me, it really was very personal too, just because I had, I grew up in New York and my parents had come from South Korea looking for a better, life for their kids, and they struggled. They didn't know the language, and I grew up thinking that food insecurity was just normal. And I remember times when we just had a bowl of ramen and that was it for the whole day, and, that kind of thing. And so learning about this club, it really brought it full circle for me. And it provided an opportunity for me to not just rescue food just in my own personal life, but also try and make this concept more of a universal standard, which it should be. It's just common sense.
It's really interesting how your personal background shapes your life and how you go forward. Thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Of course.
Okay, so we know what it is now, and it's an interesting thing. In theory, there shouldn't be leftover food, should there? But that's perhaps something else we can talk about. But I suppose what I'd like to know is, to make this work, who are the key stakeholders? Who are the parties involved, the actors?
Yeah, there's a lot of different stakeholders, honestly. There's kind of taking a step back. It's kind of a triple or even quadruple-sided market, right? I mean, when we first rescue the food, it's coming from a food business, like I mentioned, a restaurant or a catering company. Sometimes it's even, offices that have food or catering or even a cafeteria. And we have all different types of food donor partners. It's even food manufacturers, it's wholesalers, it's farms even. And, those are key stakeholders in this, because without them, we'll have no excess food to rescue. But after they donate that excess food, we have rescuers, what we call, our volunteers. And these rescuers are just dedicated, everyday people, just like you and me, who can sign up online on our website and look for a opportunity to pick up excess food from their neighborhood or from where they work or along the way to the gym or whatever it is, and actually take that food in about 30 minutes to a homeless shelter, soup kitchen, food pantry, what we call nonprofit recipients, which is the next kind of stakeholder in all of this. And, the nonprofit recipients are the ones that really distribute the food, the ones really with the boots on the ground, with the understanding of what types of food they need, and what types of, what amounts of food they need, and really being in tune with their communities. And then finally, to make all this work, we need monetary donors and financial supporters who are able to supply all the equipment. If we need to have carts or transportation or, pallet jacks, if it's, huge pickups and stuff like that, it's all of the kind of behind the scenes work that goes on, and all of the, website and automated kind of calendar updates and things like that needs to happen for the pickup to go well. So lots of different stakeholders, but it's a true community and lots of kind of connected components.
Robert, I'm
Yeah.
curious, where is this located right now? Where are you, based out of and all that?
Yeah, we're currently we are headquartered in New York City. That's where we were started, and then we have expanded to 9 different locations across the U.S. Most recently, we had our launch event last week in Los Angeles, in California.
Wow.
So super excited about that. But yeah, the locations are all on our website as well. But we're in Boston, New Jersey, Chicago, Portland, Oregon, Dallas. I always forget a few. Atlanta when I list them out. So I should just have them in alphabetical order or something. But yeah, they're all on our website as well, on our calendar.
Can I
Thanks.
just take you back a bit? Because you touched
course.
on something, and I think it's an interesting thing, because I've been involved in some food banks and some activity here in the UK. But you made the comment about when you first saw this, you thought it could be illegal. The question I want to ask you about, if you're dealing with food, there is food hygiene, food safety, things like that. How do you deal with that aspect of it?
Yeah, it's a hugely important aspect. I mean, food safety, and it's the whole reason why we do this. We don't want to be, bringing contaminated food from one place to another. So that's why we only work with food businesses. Unfortunately, we can't work with, food that's been made at home or in a facility that's not been licensed or inspected. That's the number one way we ensure that the food that we receive is of high quality and is safe for human consumption. The transportation of that food is very similar to, let's say, like a Uber Eats or like a Grub. Our volunteers are not necessarily licensed in food safety or food protection, but our team members are and our operations staff are. And potentially hazardous food can't be left out in the temperature danger zone for more than 4 hours, according to New York City the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And so, which is the strictest kind of standard that we've seen from various Department of Health. And so all of our pickups are done within 30 minutes, which is well within that safety zone. We don't bank any of the food. We don't actually store it in a central location
Right.
or handle it or anything like that. We're mostly transporting it directly rescuing that food from the food business to the nonprofit recipient, where it can be used and distributed as soon as possible. And then finally, we only work with similarly licensed nonprofit recipients, so 501c3
Okay.
nonprofit organizations that have a mission dedicated to feeding the food insecure and have a facility and have those licenses to feed the public.
Thank you. Yeah.
Robert, what are the benefits for organizations that you collect food from?
There's so many benefits, honestly. I didn't really know about it, and when I was going to college, I had thought it was enough to just do it because it makes sense and that it's going to go to waste. But truly, all good deeds need to be rewarded and really need to be incentivized, and the IRS understands that. Clearly, there's an enhanced tax deduction that is specific to food donations that allow food businesses to get up to 50% more in their deductions than they normally would if they just threw it out and had it as a cost of doing business. The calculation is a bit complicated, but it is, it is able to be done. And, there are companies that take full advantage of that and save, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in their taxes. But beyond that, there's a lot of other benefits, right? So all food businesses have to pay a commercial hauler to throw out their excess food. And so by donating that excess food, they can, save on that cost. And there's a lot of intangible benefits too, right? By telling their consumers that they donate their excess food, they can basically ensure, or kind of let it be known that their food is of the highest quality, because they're not serving day old bread or yesterday's food. They're making everything today, right? And I think that that's a huge benefit for just the consumers as well. More and more also, people are just looking for businesses that share the same values, and more businesses that are eco-friendly and environmentally conscious can resonate with their customers and really be a part of the community and ensure that all of the excess food is donated or composted, right? And it's huge way of ensuring that there's just now kind of callous, inconsiderate behavior from our businesses.
So just to follow up, and it comes back to what you're saying, you have 9 different locations throughout North America or United States. You don't have any locations in Canada, do you? Or
Not yet.
fair enough.
Ah,
We may start that. So, but
That would
where
be
I wanted
amazing.
to go is this is a big endeavor. So when you look at the volunteer group that you have, and you would have full-time employees as well, how big of a network is required to make this happen in 9? Like, what's the numbers look like? Because I would
Yeah.
think it's pretty considerable.
Yeah, it's a long tail, but we have about 10,000 volunteers. We have
wow.
15 full-time, part-time staff. And yeah, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort, but it truly is, I think, one step at a time of kind of getting to the point where this concept is a universal standard. I mean, as I mentioned, when I first started out, people thought it was illegal, and now people get it. People see that it's a common sense solution. People know that it's not illegal. I think the next step really though is having people connect the dots and understand how much of an environmental impact their excess food, contributes to. I mean, I don't think people know that we used half the U.S. land, 80% of fresh water in the U.S. to produce our food. And, to waste 40% of that is massive. I mean, we're wasting the land mass, the equivalent land mass of New York and California fully on just wasted food, just fully wasted food, which is insane. And we have an opportunity 3 times a day to eliminate or to reduce our carbon footprint. And I think that the more people understand that and the more people, hear about it, the more we'll start to demand that our food businesses, whatever restaurants we eat at or whatever we buy catering from, also donate their excess food.
Really important stats you just brought there. I do, just again, if I could, when you look at the demographics of people that actually are helping you, is it made up of people that are retired? Is it made up of students? Like, is there a typical demographic that is volunteering for you guys on this?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. I mean, in the beginning, it honestly was a lot of students just because of my own personal network and just coming out of college and things like that. And then it became a lot of, young professionals, people in banking and stuff like that from when I worked at JP Morgan before I quit my job to do this full time. But now, honestly, it's kind of across the board. We have high school students, we have college students. The majority of our kind of very active support is still students and young professionals. But we do have a sizable group of kind of retired folks as well who, want to help out and rescue food. Some of the work that we do is a bit more manual. So it's, sometimes difficult for them to carry things and stuff like that. But yeah, we have a wide range. We have families rescuing together. We have, a large variety of different groups and different walks of life, which is incredible.
Robert, I wanted to add something you mentioned, and you mentioned it a few times, the concept of thinking it was illegal. So in university, I worked as a server. Many of my friends also worked as servers at different restaurants. And obviously, Ontario, Canada laws could be different. It could be illegal. I'm not too sure. And honestly, this podcast has sparked me to look more into it after this episode. But something that I think we were told often by owners is, because you when you work in the service industry, you see the food go in the garbage and you feel that guilt and you ask, oh, why aren't we giving this to the homeless? And they respond back with oh, it is illegal, like we can't do it, yada yada yada. And it really kind of it's a statement that shuts down the conversation. If someone tells you something's illegal, you're like, oh, okay, and like I just assumed it was illegal for this last 6 years, and now with this conversation with you, it's really made me think that I gotta search up our Ontario laws and see if that truly is the case.
Yeah,
Lysandra,
it's fascinating.
yeah, Lysandra, I think one of the issues that brings that up is food that's been served to the customer and left on the plate, you cannot do something with.
Yeah.
And so it's true to say you cannot do that. But it's, if you've got a row of burgers sat there that you have not served, then that's a different thing. But I think you're right. We have a thing here. There's two big excuses for not doing things: data protection and health and safety. And you sort of go out, oh, we can't do that because of data protection, or we can't do that, it would be against health and safety. And usually it shuts people up until they go, well, explain to me how it is.
Yes.
Where's the problem? Yeah. And I think what you're talking about is an awful lot of players don't want, and I've done work in the food industry, and a lot of them, they don't want this complication, but the enlightened ones do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there are food rescue organizations in Canada, so I'm sure it's not illegal, although, I haven't, fully looked into the laws there. But yeah, it's fascinating. I think a lot of it is just status quo, right? I mean, people are just used to hearing it and just, habits form, and then you just kind of stick to what you know is safe and what you know is,
I know another one of the concerns at a few restaurants that myself and friends have worked at is, once we start, and this is so terrible to say, but once we start donating the excess food that hasn't been served, then people are going to produce more of that food just so that it can be donated. And I remember hearing that and thinking, oh my gosh, like, to think that you don't want to do this good deed because maybe your employees may make an extra cup or two. I remember hearing that statement quite a bit.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's also factually, I mean, from our perspective and our kind of analytics of our food donor partners and the amount of food that they donate, it's factually untrue. I mean, once you start to measure something, you kind of understand it better. And what we've seen with our food donor partners is typically they don't actually know how much they actually throw out or they donate. We've had, multiple, well, actually, this is the common trend. Most of our food donor partners tell us a specific estimate, and it's usually double that estimate the first week or 2 weeks that they donate. And then typically it drops off. It typically kind of levels out at about the estimate that they gave us. But without measuring it, without tracking it, and just kind of throwing it out, they won't know how much they're actually wasting. And it's not like the garbage, companies are measuring their waste and telling them the details. We have a platform where they can log in and see how many pounds of food and, convert that into enhanced tax deductions for them. But truly, they're able to actually reduce the amount of, food that they donate because they're actually tracking it. And, I think the best part of this is also that, well, it's kind of the best part and the worst part, which is that, out of the 40% of food that we waste, if we just took and rescued 1/3 of that, that's enough nutrition to eliminate food insecurity in the U.S.
Wow.
And it's the same thing with the world too. I mean, across the world, we waste about over 30% of food, and only 1/3 of it is enough to just eliminate not just extreme poverty, but like entirely poverty. And it's a fact that we produce enough food to feed everyone. We just don't, and the distribution of that is the key, and the what I see it as is a logistics problem, and we can solve this.
I just one comment, Robert. It would be interesting to know that your analogy on food waste is the same thing for energy. Most customers waste it; they have no idea because they don't measure it. So it dovetails with the stuff that we do. It's quite interesting. Same practice or poor practice that goes on. Yeah.
Exactly. Can I? My question, you've answered some of this. You've talked about some of the resources that are required. You've mentioned you've got 10,000 volunteers, you've got 9 locations. What I'm interested in is, if you like, what's the technologies that you have to employ? What's the machinery that makes rescuing leftover cuisine work?
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky enough to kind of be plugged into technology early on. We knew that we couldn't, hire a lot of like coordination, coordinators and logistics staff, and so we wanted to automate it as much as possible. And so we ended up creating just a MVP, like a very small prototype of a website that coordinated a calendar, basically automating the automated reminder emails and confirmation emails and kind of laying out all the steps of how to do a successful rescue. And that kind of morphed into our own kind of proprietary Ruby on Rails web application, which, it has its pros and cons in that, we are, using a proprietary app, but it means it's highly customizable, but at the same time, every little change requires quite a lot of work and a lot of bugs and things like that. And so it's been interesting to kind of, have this website portal where essentially food donors can log in and they can see a profile and see when their next donation is, who's going to be doing that pickup, get their phone number and the details in case they need to put it into the system for security purposes, but also get information about their trends, and they can see like, hey, they donate maybe 50% more than normal on Fridays or something like that, and that might be a day they need to reduce their inventory and find ways to reduce their costs. And a way for them to get their enhanced tax deductions, as I mentioned. But truly, it's been a way to kind of coordinate everything in one place without having a giant staff and team to do all this manual work.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, to end off this episode, what is the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaways for everyone listening really is that food rescue really needs to be the universal standard. I think, regardless of whether or not it's rescuing leftover cuisine or another food rescue organization, we need to kind of make it known to our food businesses and to, the world really, that we expect this and that this is the normal standard thing that we should all be doing. The way I think that we can do that is to start asking your restaurant that you eat at what they do with their excess food, and that this organization, rescuing leftover cuisine or whatever local food rescue organization exists, and recommend them and have them try them out, and obviously if they don't work out, try a different one. The other thing I think is that, and this is kind of encompassing this as well, which is that everyone can really make a difference and everyone can volunteer or rescue their own, excess at home, or, I always make sure that I never go grocery shopping when I'm hungry, because then I just start grabbing all kinds of things, and, we can all make a huge difference 3 times a day to reduce our carbon footprint and our wasted food.
Thanks for that. John, what's your biggest takeaway?
Well, I smile when you say takeaway in this context, because in this country we call a takeout a takeaway.
That's awesome.
Well done.
But no, I reflect. I mentioned I'm a part-time volunteer for a food banks. Just for background, in the UK, these are not prepared food. This is unrefrigerated food, canned food, packet food, things like that, collected, stored at a common location, and then given out to people in need. And one of the strap lines of the food bank movement in the UK is we want to put ourselves out of business. And the argument being, in an equitable society, there wouldn't be a need for a food bank. And I was going to say the biggest takeaway was what Robert had mentioned, that we have enough food in the world to feed everybody. We're just really bad at distributing it. And I think all of us who are privileged really need to take that on board.
Thanks for that, John. Dave, what's your biggest takeaway?
I think Robert did a great job kind of summarizing, but I'll say this. My sister recently retired, but she was actively involved in leading an organization that was distributing food bank. And unfortunately, the demand for this type of service is only getting greater, not lower, as John was indicating. So I want to applaud you, Robert, and all your volunteers, and for doing work that's required, not only to help people that actually are in need, but actually all the benefits that you've said that actually help out with the environment. Your stats about how we waste and the amount of land we use and stuff, it's significant. And I don't think we as consumers, and I think all of us on the call here, certainly John, myself, Lysandra, like we've lived a pretty privileged life, and I don't think we appreciate or accept what goes on. So I think, good on you. Last point I want to make is I love talking to leaders, and I love to hear what drives them. Your story about who you are and how you grew up, you're driven. You've got a passion for that. So good on you, and I hope all the best for you and your organization as well.
Yeah, here.
Thank you so much.
I think for me, my biggest takeaway, and we all go grocery shopping and we all buy snacks, and it's always like every 4 months maybe you're looking in your pantry and you're checking what's expired and you're throwing it out, right? I think what I've tried to do, especially over the last couple of years, is like really look at what I'm throwing out and like try to remember what I was thinking when I grabbed it in the grocery aisle. Because I think when you actually look at how much, like especially for my family, like it'll be produce, let's say, if we throw it a lot that week. Me and my mom are like looking in the garbage and we're like, this is embarrassing. Like it's just so terrible to throw out so much food. And I think it's when we're in the grocery aisles now, we kind of ask each other, like, are we actually making that dish this week? Because if not, we can come a different time rather than let this go bad and then go again next week and purchase it again, right? So just being very critical of your own usage at home can make such a difference, because I think we easily, I mean, maybe Robert's more conscious than we are, but if we all take a look at our pantries and things like that, I'm sure we can fill up a garbage bag easily with things that are expired or past due. And it really makes you question, how much are we purchasing versus how much are we eating?
Yeah, I don't want to prolong things, but you've touched on something there that's becoming an issue here. And this is best before dates on food. And one of the things that's happening on certain produce, typically vegetables and things like that, retailers now are not putting a best before date on it. Because people get muddled up with a safe date and a best before date. And a safe date basically says if you're eating it after this date, it's dangerous. A best before says if you want this at its highest quality, you should eat it before here. I mean, a simple example of it is a can of beer. I mean, if it's a month past its best before date, it's probably perfectly drinkable. On the other hand, a chicken breast that's 4 days beyond its date, I probably wouldn't touch it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, three, for a great episode.
Thank you, Robert.
Appreciate it, Robert.
Thank you for having me again. This is awesome.
That's all for today's episode of the 360 on Energy and Carbon podcast. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check us out on our website at 360energy.net and follow us on LinkedIn at 360energy Inc. Tune in to our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Anchor, or other listening platforms by searching the 360 on Energy and Carbon. You can watch the video recording and subscribe on YouTube at 360 Energy Inc. Email us your feedback at podcast@360energy.net or comment on our LinkedIn post. See you next week.